and you mentioned the name earlier, and this doesn't surprise me that people don't get it, because the nature of this game is something that you got to be maybe a little more sophisticated than some people are capable of being about the game. The Gordon Hayward we had this year, if they had that Gordon Hayward, they're playing the Lakers right now tonight.
Sure.
They're playing the Lakers. He was still playing great. You saw it in that Philly game, and then something happened. He's cursed. I don't know why, but what happened to him against Philadelphia could happen to you, me, anybody playing in their backyard and the driveway. He came down on somebody's foot and turned his ankle and ruined his playoffs. Yeah, he had the one decent contribution in 5, but he was, obviously you saw him at 6. It wasn't there. It wasn't himself. It was just, there was nothing. So everybody wants to give it. No, I'm happy to come back with this group, technically, with the addition of that, the 2 things we talked about. But I'm not angry with them. I don't think we're going to go out there and find better players than this group by getting rid of them.
Let's zero in on that for a moment, only because he is unquestionably, to me, the most polarizing player on the Celtics when it comes to the Twitterverse and people out there that either, as I often say it, people that I don't want to say don't know the game, because there are certainly people like Sean Devaney was on with us last week who knows the game. He writes about basketball. He follows basketball. He just does not view Gordon Hayward as someone who is, indispensable, someone who is, even important necessarily to the construction of the Celtics. He looks at him as redundant and even, somewhat in the way of the development of guys like Tatum and Brown. And I couldn't disagree with all of that more. I think that they are a better team when Gordon Hayward is on the floor. And, as you highlighted before, there are so many different cases evidencing that very thing, whether during the regular season or in the bubble, obviously, before he got hurt. And then when he did come back ever so briefly, and then obviously didn't have it in that elimination game. But I bring him up again, not only because, again, I feel he's important, but because when it comes to Danny Ainge attempting to manipulate this roster in some way, people are going to look at this offseason and say, the Gordon Hayward decision looms large, because they're capped out either way. That's what a lot of people forget. They're capped out either way. So it's either you bring back Gordon Hayward, meaning he decides to opt in. It's not like you can take that $34 million and put it elsewhere. It either goes to Hayward or it goes to nobody. You'd rather have a Gordon Hayward than have nobody, in my mind. Some people disagree with that. Or you don't give him that money. He opts out. You negotiate like you intended to do with Al Horford last year, a longer-term deal, lower average annual value. He comes back for a few more years, tries to rebuild, rejuvenate his career. Or obviously, there's a third option that I don't think is at all likely, but it is possible, which is Hayward opts back in, and then Danny Ainge tries to trade him. And obviously, he is, he's a businessman first. A lot of people have joked, including yourself, he'd trade his mother in the right package. But, I think, one, I don't know how much you'd get for Hayward necessarily. There's Indiana talk, obviously, of Turner wanting out potentially, and Oladipo with the injuries, and there are other teams. People have mentioned Nemanja Bjelica, guys like that. But I also think there's sort of that real world impact. We heard it all with the Anthony Davis stuff of him reportedly, according to his dad, not wanting to come to Boston after the way the Celtics did Isaiah Thomas dirty, trading him after everything that he went through and put his body on the line. If you trade Gordon Hayward through no fault of the Celtics, but everything that happened to him during his time in Boston, it's a bad look. As, pre-Kemba Walker, the best or biggest name free agent signing they've ever had. It was Horford, Hayward, Kemba in that order, and now in reverse order. Those are the biggest names free agent wise the Celtics have ever brought in. If you trade that guy right now, it may down the line make some players around the league, as personal as they take things and as sensitive as they are, say, I don't know if I want to go there under Danny Ainge. I don't know if I want to be on that team knowing that my ass could be out of there, and that there's a lack of loyalty in this situation, especially given Hayward's history with Brad Stevens and all of that. So that's all a long-winded way of saying the Hayward situation is very complicated, for one, and second, it's the biggest decision, because if you want to shake this roster up in any really substantial way, moving Hayward is kind of the only way to do it.
With regard to Isaiah Thomas, I continue to wonder if there will be ramifications, as you alluded to. due to the way the people feel he was maltreated by the Boston Celtics, playing gutsy with his hip, having the personal life tragedy that befell him at a highly inopportune time, and a kind of obviously pretty generally good person that I believe, we all believe he is to be. He deserved a better treatment. A lot of people are looking out and saying that he got from the Boston Celtics, and how that will rebound and hurt them down the road, it remains to be seen, but it's a conceivable possibility. You're right to make reference to that. Gordon Hayward. First of all, if he himself opts out, I think Mrs. Hayward would be very upset if Gordon Gordon decides he's going to play loose with the money. I'm a fan, and I think Game 5 should have opened up some eyes. At least if you're going to play zone against the Boston Celtics, go right ahead. We're putting Gordon in there, and there goes your zone. He will be your focal point. We will stick him in the middle of that offense, and we will paper cut you to death. No, so forget about playing zone against Boston if Gordon Hayward's in there. I'm a fan. I think you have to appreciate this game. He reminds me in a lot of ways. I'm going to go back almost two generations now. I'm sorry, I can't help it. The Bill Bradley contribution as a professional player. He was one of the handful of greatest college players of all time, but he didn't have the physical capability of imposing his will on the NBA the way he did in college basketball. But he was a terrific player on 2 championship Knicks teams, and he kept the ball moving. He kept the ball. He without the title, he was never a point guard. He was a point forward before we had the phrase. He was instrumental in keeping their offense smoothly functioning, and that's what Gordon Hayward does with this team. Those young guys all know it. They know it. They should, those fans those people that are criticizing Hayward, I got news for them. There would be a very unhappy group of Jalen's and Jason's and Marcus's if Gordon Hayward weren't here. He's not impeding their progress. He's embedding them. You're right. So this is foolish. However, Danny Ainge has said since he became his first draft, is the most unpredictable and fearless general manager in the National Basketball Association. Always fasten your seatbelt on draft day. Okay? We learned that 2007 specifically, but there were other times too. Danny Ainge is not above worrying about criticism. We don't worry about criticism. So he might, could he find a deal that might work in his mind for Hayward? Sure. Don't ever be shocked. I don't want him to do that, but I will respect this. Just don't be shocked. That's all. Danny's unpredictable. But I think you bring this team back, give me a shooter, give me a big body 5, and I'm a very happy guy.
Yeah, the shooter that everybody wanted at the trade deadline is Davis Bertans, who is just turning into one of the greatest 3-point shooters for a season in a long time. The guys that would, if you had put Davis Bertans on this team, they're like, I'm with you, they're still playing, and I think that Hayward situation. If you take you look at all these teams now, like look at the Miami Heat. Who's the 4th best player in the Miami Heat, right? If you took him off the roster and gave him some ailment, and all of a sudden, put him back out there, he wouldn't do well either. And it's a big part of what they do. And I like the Hayward idea. I'm nervous though, because we've seen, and they're all flukes, Bob. They're all flukes. We talked about it. We had the ankle injury, the broken hand, the sprained ankle. I know. It just prevents him from getting any rhythm at all whatsoever. And you can argue the fact that him getting hurt was great for Jason Tatum, because Jason had to step up, and, he turned into this monster in February and carried that over pretty much into the bubble. He was fantastic. Jaylen Brown has stepped up a level. They've had to kind of organically, right? You go back to that first run they had in the playoffs. No Kyrie Irving, no Gordon Hayward. Those two got quite the baptism of fire by just getting thrown into it, every single game. You're battling LeBron until Game 7, and Terry Rozier doesn't have a great game, so they and Marcus Morris doesn't have a great game, so they lose. But that Gordon Hayward contract, because again, you're going to lose it at some point, and then again, life gets complicated, with the Jason Tatum extension, and all that stuff. There is a way to take that much money and find a way to get somebody that can maybe help them a little better. Look, I'm not suggesting trading Gordon Hayward or not. I've looked at the body of work. And as great as it is, and again, when they're really humming and when Gordon's really great, they are dangerous. And you're right, you can't play zone against them. They have 4 guys that can really control the basketball in terms of setting up their offense between Tatum, Walker, Smart, and Hayward. they're a way different animal. But past evidence has showed us that Gordon has a hard time staying healthy. And as hard as it is to come to grips with, you can't not have him on the team and try to make the NBA Finals. I mean, it's just difficult. And again, we've talked about other teams are going to get better. Milwaukee's going to find a way to get better. Miami will find ways to get better because they have great trade pieces if you want to do it.
Indiana, when they get, they didn't have Sabonis in the end.
Right.
I don't know. We don't know where the disposition of Oladipo is going to be, but the other guy's injury situation. But Indiana, throw them in the mix. You have to worry about them. And we have no idea where Brooklyn's going to present, what other kind of problem they will present next year. We have no idea. Just want to say, no, I wouldn't go weep and wail if they trade Hayward, because I would think it would be because if it can do it, it's for I would like to think a very good reason. And right. I don't know who is in love with him. Somebody might be out there that is in love with him other than his home state team. I don't know. But But one of the things that clouds all the issue for some people, not everybody, is the money. It's the fact that we know he's very expensive. We know he was a very expensive free agent. And we're not getting, and overall, if you're going to give him a grade on what he's been able to produce, with all the injuries, and whether or not, and nothing is his fault, but, what's the grade? C+? B- at the most, right? Total?
Yeah. As the meme, total? Not great, Bob.
Right?
Not great,
no,
Bob.
That's not at that salary level. No. That's okay for, somebody else, but not for him. No, he hasn't been worth it. I'll be honest. I keep waiting and hoping we're going to get maximum value. We've had flashes.